Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and I think this is going to be our last official. No, I guess we'll have one more preseason episode left before we jump into regular season Just Giants.
I think next week we'll start our 2 shows a week, right? We'll do whatever final tying up loose ends for preseason and get into our season preview show next Thursday.
That's right. So you guys are listening to this on Tuesday morning. It is roster cut down day. So by 4 p.m. we'll have our initial 53-man roster, which will immediately be different. Be different almost immediately after 4 p.m.
Probably an hour later. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then there's going to be kind of a flurry of moves throughout the week, and I think we'll kind of be a little bit settled towards our week 1 roster by next Tuesday, so that'll be our next episode. And then that Thursday goes into our 2 weeks. It's time. This is it.
Thank God.
And it's Labor Day.
It's Labor Day. Florida State's already lost. I mean, we're already playing with house money this football season because, quite honestly, this might be a long year, and we have to count our blessings. So Saturday was my first blessing with a Florida State loss, and now we're ready to go. We have season kicks off this Saturday. Giants start next Sunday. I'm ready, Grump.
All right, so we were blessed with one final beaut of a preseason game. The Jets and Giants might have played the most boring game of all time. Jets 10, Giants 6.
Over under, Grump. When did you think you'd fall asleep watching it?
It was on fairly early for a youngin' like myself to fall asleep on a Saturday, but I actually was out doing a lot of work all day Saturday, so I passed out in the fourth quarter. Had to rewatch.
Yeah, I was at NYCFC Saturday night, and I finally got to watch a full rewatch today when it was on NFL Network, and I made it at about the 7-minute mark of the first quarter, and I was in La La Land. That's amazing.
In any case, this is this was horrible for a number of reasons, but also not to be taken too seriously. This is the last preseason game. You're kind of looking at a handful of guys that are jockeying for the last couple spots. I mean, we'll say that everybody there is fighting for the last couple spots, but if we're being serious, there's some guy there that are just fighting for a practice squad spot. They know that if they don't even get that, then they've got nothing. So there was a lot of just nothing really to watch.
And in spite of being a season ticket holder, these games are not for you and they're not for me.
Right.
They are for the coaches and they are for the players. And if you keep in that perspective, you don't get to complain and bitch and moan how boring it was. It's not for you. You're getting a sneak peek kind of behind the curtain of how their evaluation process going.
It's mostly like a scrimmage on the far field.
Yeah, and to me, as we finish up preseason, I'm just a little disappointed. I would have liked to seen, the starters getting in another couple series, to get ready for the season. But
it was almost not worth it with the Jets not really doing it either. I think there was still some level of worth itness, but
get your reps in. Even if you're playing the second string or the third team or the Jet, cheerleaders, it doesn't matter. That offensive line is going to start the season without playing one snap with the 5 starters together. Daniel Jones is coming off a major surgery and needs reps. I didn't say they have to play the whole game. I don't care about that. It's just like go through the cadence of getting in the routine, because now we're going to have 15 days off before they have another game again, and that's quite a while. However, having said that, I kind of like the way since we got down to 3 games, having this time in between the last preseason game and the regular season game, I kind of like it. My main reason is, up until this point, coaches are doing as much evaluation as they are getting a team prepared to play. And that mixture, we can debate about whether it's the right, mix or not preparing enough for the season as opposed to playing everybody and seeing. We now have over 2 weeks. You know who your roster is. There's no more wasting reps, no more wasting time, wasting film evaluation of guys who are probably not going to make the team. This is our team. Yes, in your beginning of the show, you did say there's going to be some tweaks here and there. There'll be some cut down day pickups and some slight tweaks along the margins, but this is our team pretty much. And now we have time to prepare through another weekend and another week of game day prep. And to me, I think you're going to see a little more cleanness, I think, getting in that first game than we might have otherwise, where you're just kind of scrambling to get started after a final game. You agree about that?
I do like the space. I think in the format of the 4 games back in the day, you kind of had this anyway for your starters because they handled it differently. So I guess like the third game used to be the dress rehearsal, so starters would play like into the third quarter, and then that fourth game, that in between week, like no starters played ever, no one across the league. So
yeah,
I think that this is fine. I think the 3 preseason games is probably the right number in my opinion. I think that there's value to this game for the coaching staff and for the rest of the league who are looking for waiver claims around the league. So I think there's value to this third game, even though I'm also downplaying how much I've reacted to it or how much I'm freaking out about it. I think that really, as long as they increase the practice time, the 3 preseason games is perfect. Because I think the fourth one, with them playing into the third quarter, being the standard, I think you're increasing your chance of injury. Whereas if you just have the extra practice time, I don't think you're really increasing your risk of injury the same way. Because it's not a competitive environment. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have guys fighting for a job and therefore biting and scratching and clawing at ankles that can cause, you know what I mean? Like real game shit. In a practice.
You're doing more drills, more controlled drills,
right.
More,
You're more in shape, you're more in muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree with you. So, and then like I was saying, this game, I didn't freak out about much. I'm only looking at a few things on each side critically, and then the rest I'm kind of taking note of for practice squad, for down the line, for development, for next year, for weakness and depth, that sort of thing. And on the offensive side of the ball, the one note that I really truly had was the projected backup offensive tackles look better in the run game than in pass protection. And what's upsetting about this, I'm talking about Josh Azudu and Evan Neal.
Mm-hmm.
They look okay run blocking. They both look bad against third string, second string defensive linemen, albeit a very well put together defensive roster. So maybe it's better defensive linemen in their second string than around the league, but still, Jesus Christ.
Evan Neal is the 6th pick in the draft, and we're complaining that, well, maybe it's a second string is better than another team's second string. That's not good. That's
and
bad.
I mean, on some level, I'm not freaking out about this because both guys, I would say, really needed the new coaching, right? That's something that they both really needed. They both had Bobby Johnson as their only offensive line coach in the NFL. And so I want to give them time to learn. So, they've had 3 preseason games to learn from him. I don't expect the world. But at the same time, I'm looking at our projected backup tackles look like guards.
Mm-hmm.
They look like guards. Our 2 backup tackles look like guards. And that's bad. I cannot not freak out about that.
Sure. And that's just an overall fear that when we've had that all offseason and stuff too, that's not the game was bad because that made us realize that we knew this. I think this is just more of a validation of that in my mind, and that very fine line between having 5 starters and soon one guy goes down or 2 guys go down, that we go from maybe having a competent offense to potentially getting your quarterback killed and having to reevaluate how this team is going forward for the next 5 years. It's really scary. And I feel like we've been in the same position for quite a while now. And, here we go again.
I didn't really have any other notes about the offense. Nothing really freaked me out or worried me too much outside of that. I was pretty okay with everything else.
I want to talk just for a minute about Tommy DeVito, because he's had he's had quite a bit of snaps this preseason. Just overall, do you feel that he has made a leap from last year to this year? Is your confidence level, gone up a little bit more or down a little bit that this guy can be, someone to keep investing in going forward as, eventually becoming a backup quarterback? I mean, I think it's safe to say he's never going to be a starting quarterback in this league. I think it's pretty obvious, but being a smart guy who can run an offense and just get you through one game, two game, once, one set of downs and stuff going forward. Has your opinion changed after this preseason and going into it?
So my opinion, for the record, before I go into this, was that by year 3, you might have a quarterback 2 on your hands. Was always my opinion on him since before last season started. Has my opinion changed? I would say no. And the reason is because there is no way to tell that there would have been any improvement from what we have seen thus far. What we saw from him was a rookie that was thrust into action, untrained, looked like garbage, and then when he had a week's worth of reps, we were able to game plan wins for him.
Right.
So now our only other film since then is him continuing to play with horrendous backups. I mean, absolutely awful offensive line play, receivers not really getting open, and in vanilla situations with no game planning. So I don't think that there is any way to tell, going from the only 2 things of evidence we've seen is meticulous game planning for a rookie that really didn't get an offseason and really just kind of was, I mean, he didn't get a serious offseason last year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we get that sample A, and then sample B is the most stark opposite thing that you could get. So I don't think there's any way to tell if he's improved thus far. What I can say is when he played for the starters a little bit, kind of the one that the 2 is really, in the first preseason game when Drew Lock got hurt, he looked invariably better than Drew Lock. And throughout camp, the only thing that I had heard was that he looked very steady. There was nothing really to complain about with Tommy DeVito, but Drew Lock never looked good. So in this moment, I would say the fan has no idea if he's improved. So I think that the Giants' current situation is that it sort of doesn't matter for this year. They're kind of stuck with this, so we will find out, right? I mean, that's kind of where I'm landing with this.
Yeah, I think it was 2 episodes earlier. I threw out a thing at, if Daniel Jones gets hurt again and he's out for 8 to 10 weeks,
we're done
in my mind,
who cares?
But play him because he's not very good. He's not ready to be a backup quarterback, and you're most 9 times out of 10 you're probably turning the page from Daniel Jones anyway. You might as well tank with a guy like him. So
Absolutely.
that's a lot of my thought. I agree with a lot of what you said. My only thing though is, yeah, he's playing with a bad offensive line. He's playing with receivers that probably won't be in the league, but he's also playing against guys that are, a bad defensive line.
No. Hang on. Wait. Because I'm not just saying he's playing behind third stringers. I'm saying he's playing behind worse third stringers. And it was obvious. I mean, I'm not just saying the offensive line is bad. Look at the names. I'm saying look at literally their third stringers are running right past them. Every single play, he's got at least one guy grabbing on his shoulder pad. And I know he's not the best mover in the pocket, but it's every single play. It's not.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was impossible to tell anything from that shit.
It was like the end of the 2021 season, kind of. Remember how bad that was at the end, where every time that fucknuts from Georgia would drop back to pass. It was like, oh my God, this guy is going to die. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how it did feel. So yeah, I feel what you're saying for that too. I guess it's really a hard evaluation, but
I mean, this was his chance to shine. This is where you would like to see that. But really, the only thing I think you can go with was the first preseason game where he played in Drew Lock's place when Drew Lock got hurt. That's the closest you were going to get, and he looked functional. He didn't look great, you know what I mean? So, and quite frankly, he looked quite like what he looked like in the regular season last year. So I'm not sitting here and saying that Tommy DeVito looked great. They should keep him. They absolutely should develop him. I'm saying in my opinion, it's completely impossible to tell if anything's changed from what we as fans were able to see.
And that's all I really wanted to do is can I get a temperature check from you of where you think where he is, and that's a fair explanation too. Because again, we don't have to make any decisions yet. I think based on, we're going to talk about the roster breakdown and everything going forward. I don't think his spot is a critical spot to really, I want to keep X or Y. That means Tommy DeVito has to go, or having to worry about gambling to get him through, somebody else claiming him or something. So that's all. Just wanted to get a temperature check on him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very neutral on him, but I get a little incensed because people have super strong opinions, and I just don't know how you could have such a strong opinion about him in this moment. Like, I don't get one way or the other. I don't understand what the strong opinion.
I would probably never be on he should be starting, this year or in even 3 years. I never even think. But I also, for what, you can't worry about the 2027 season or the 2026 season. You have to worry about this year. And for what he is for this team, I guess, the assumption is, Drew Lock's going to be on this team and be the backup. Let him just keep becoming like a very good third-team scout team guy for your practices and stuff and learn your offense.
Yeah. And for the record, just because it's a good thing that he becomes a good quarterback too, because if he becomes a valuable trade piece, then he is I'm not arguing him to be in any way down the line being the starting quarterback at any point. Like, this isn't coming from a favoritism or anything standpoint. It becomes an asset if he's a quarterback too. Mm-hmm. That's why you
want it. Sure.
I didn't really have anything else on the offense. Defense, the only thing I really saw that was just really frustrating for me is, and I know what I'm dealing with here from the roster standpoint, but this is kind of a coaching thing. Tackling was just horrendous in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, just missed tackles left and right, and even some tackles that were made were in this weird swinging variety that was really sloppy and ended in 3 extra yards. I'm hoping that becomes, no matter which of those guys stay or go, that becomes a coaching point for a week.
So let me ask you a bigger question. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I'll ask it anyway because I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask that. Do you feel after week 3 of preseason, do you think this team is more prepared for the regular season than they were last year? Even think about things about, tackling looked poor. And I know who was tackling, but it's does this team look like we wanted Brian Dable and coaching staff to have this team ready to play for week 1, not ease their way in with such a, being afraid of injuries. Do you think we're more ready to play than this point last year?
Do I think we're more ready to play, or did we look more ready to play?
Well, answer both then.
I think that probably we're more ready to play this year. I think the approach to the offseason has been much more aggressive. But last year, the one drive that we got to see from the starting offense and the starting defense looked significantly better. Mm-hmm. And what's weird about that is that I had these butterflies about it last year that was just I just don't agree with this approach. I feel like this is soft. I would like to see more. I always want to see more. So I mean, I even wanted to see more this year, and so you can imagine what I felt like last year. So it was this uneasy feeling, but undoubtedly we looked better last year in our preseason work, in my opinion anyway, right?
I agree.
I do think we are in a better spot.
I think overall, I think I don't expect to see week 1 just the complete special teams look like a complete mess, or procedural things in week 1 is just driving us up a wall more than normal. I think it's going to be better. I hope it's going to be better. If it isn't, I'm going to be rather pissed and rather kind of concerned, actually, for
Yeah, me too.
because again, this is, nobody's on anybody's hot seat right now, or certainly none of our hot seats right now. But when you start to get to year 3, it's time to start evaluating things. And it's like, all right, another year where we're starting the season kind of like on week 3. And, we're not good enough to be, just giving away weeks 1 and week 2.
Along the lines of what you're saying, the only other note I had from this game was I'm done with the Isaiah McKenzie experiment on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care that much about special teams. To me, there are 4 really important people on your special teams. It's your long snapper, your holder / punter, your kicker, and your returner. And all I need them to the only one that really has the most crucial job is the kicker has got to score points. Everybody else just has to not fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
Don't fuck up the snap. Don't fuck up the hold. Don't fuck up the punt, and don't fuck
drop
up the
it.
punt return. And
right.
Isaiah McKenzie is a fuck up waiting to happen. I've seen enough. And like what's really frustrating is that Eric Gray must feel like a completely different person this year after his preseason outing, just playing running back. And they tried to force him into being a roster saver by having him return punts, which he can't do. And he was horrible at it. And I'm sure it shot the kid's confidence in some regard. And it would be criminal to make the same mistake again, to try and get Isaiah McKenzie to do something he clearly cannot do cleanly.
Yep.
Just because we want him to have the wide receiver roster spot. This is the whole reason you go out and get Gunnar Olszewski.
Yep.
So I've seen enough with McKenzie is all I'm saying there.
And also do a better job maybe, managing your cap so you don't have to worry so much about, I'm going to have this guy do this and do that when they're not doing what they do best.
So let's get into the roster, huh?
Let's get into it.
So I have no idea what the Giants are going to do, but I can bet very much that at certain positions they will be there will be people making this roster that will not be on the roster an hour later, because they are going to be hitting the waiver wire hard for a couple different spots, because we are far worse than the league average in a few spots. So
and let's also just point this out too, that we pick 6th in the waiver pickups. Is that how it works?
Yep.
So we're pretty high up on the list for for making claims and getting guys. So that's one advantage of being shitty the year before.
So I'm going to kind of go through what I would do. I don't know what the hell the team is going to do, because I guarantee you they're going to pick some guys that are, I don't know, more likely to be moved or something like that. I don't know. But I'm going to kind of go through and say what I would do. So let's start right away with the quarterback. Are you keeping all 3?
I actually thought long and hard about getting rid of Drew Lock, but I ended up keeping him.
Yeah, I think the way his contract's structured would be kind of silly. Unless I could see maybe a situation based on his injury. Remember, and I don't know all the rules here, but there's like a short-term IR for 4 days, and I think that for 4 weeks. And I don't know if he is a potential candidate to allow another person to get on the team.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking, like I said, my break the glass plan, if Daniel Jones gets hurt, is just roll with Tommy DeVito and let the chips fall where they way. But I don't know. I'm not ready to do that yet. If it's just like if a Daniel Jones is out for a week thing, I think we keep him and see what happens.
Yeah. Moving over to running back, I only picked 3. Devin Singletary is the clear starter. I think that they really like Tyrone Tracy. I think they have a plan for Tyrone Tracy, and I thought Tyrone Tracy looked the second best. And then I thought Eric Gray looked good. Dante Miller, I think, is a special guy that they should hold on to, but I don't think he showed enough in the preseason that he can't slip onto the practice squad.
Yeah. Special guy to me, special means that guy should be starting. Very, you know what I mean? When he says, like, yeah, he's an interesting cat, something we may want to kind of develop a little more, but we're talking about 3rd or 4th running back on a not very good team. So I say we try to get him on the practice squad too. I have the same thing.
I have them keeping the fullback, Jakob Johnson. I think it's something they clearly want to do. I think it's something Brasillo thinks they should do, and I think Dable agrees with him.
I have him as well.
Tight ends, I'm only keeping 3, and I'm going Daniel Bellinger, Theo Johnson, and Chris Manhertz.
We're chalk.
All right. This is where I think I'm probably off the rails from everyone else. I have them taking 7 wide receivers. What do you got? You have more or less?
I have 6.
Okay, yeah, I thought I might have more. So I have Neighbors, Hyatt, Wandale are your clear 3 starters. I think Slayton might even be starter for the first couple of weeks before Hyatt gets in there more often.
Mm-hmm.
I have them keeping Olszewski. I don't know the nature of how much longer he's going to be hurt with the groin thing, but I think that they don't have a choice.
He might be one of those IR guys too. But I have him. I have them keeping him.
I have Miles Boykin making the team strictly on a special teams basis. I think he has like emergency wide receiver ability. And I have Isaiah Hodgins making the team.
I have Mount.
Okay. So I went with that because Olszewski's hurt for starters and Boykin stinks. So, if they have to figure something out for a couple weeks, I just went on a whole rant about McKenzie and Olszewski, but there's a difference between, like, I think you figure out a solution for a couple weeks if it's only a couple weeks for Olszewski to get back to good health. Mm-hmm. But I mean, also, if it's like a soft tissue thing like it is, I'm okay with him fair catching if that's like, you know what I mean?
Sure, exactly.
Anything. Like I said, I don't need Devin Hester on a bad team. I need the special teams to not screw up.
Right,
and
exactly.
I think also Isaiah McKenzie didn't do anything that he is I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't get claimed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're talking about these guys we think are, 7th, 8th receivers on a, team. The odds of them being snapped up are, there's a relatively good chance these guys will be around. So I think it's fair. I'm with you so far. We're right on there with our picks.
No, I have one more wide receiver than you. I have Hodgins, you don't. But what's interesting is I think Allen Robinson could be interchangeable with Isaiah Hodgins too. Like if they choose to go my route and do the 7 and keep Olszewski or not McKenzie or whatever, I could see them flip-flopping Allen Robinson and Isaiah Hodgins.
Robinson's a little younger?
No, Allen Robinson's
older. He's older. Yeah. Okay. I think we're
all right, so the offensive line, this is where it gets weird.
Okay.
I guess I'll do interior guys and then I'll do tackles.
Go ahead.
So interior guys, I have 5. I have John Michael Schmitz, John Runyon Jr., Greg Van Roten, and then Aaron Stinney and Jake Kubas. I think that Austin Schlottman gets axed because they were trying desperately to find anyone other than Austin Schlottman to be the backup center, even though he is the center among the group. They've rotated everybody else in there, and Austin Schlottman to me looked horrendous against the Jets, which is just bad news.
I think he was on maybe more of a bubble for me until the Jet game, and now I'm like, nah.
Yeah, same. And Jake Kubas, I don't, but he's super young, undrafted guy. I thought that he was a long shot to even be considered. I thought he may not be a practice squad guy, and then when I saw him throughout the 3 preseason games, the way he was rotating, I didn't hate it. I think he's just about as good as Austin Schlottman. So I think, even though, I just think I
think I didn't hate it is an official designation that we should kind of be like striving for right now.
Which also Jake Kubas could find his way to the practice squad. Which again, this is a guy that could make the roster initially and then is the one that goes when they hit the waiver wire. So
right. Yeah.
This we're in the 50 to 53 territory with Jake Kubas for me at least. So what did you have?
I had the same.
Oh, really? Okay.
I actually did, yeah.
Okay.
I had Schlottman I have him penciled out because I started off with this list. I started working on it last night, and then when I watched the tape of the game today, I kind of in pencil took him off.
So then at tackle, I only have 4, and this is, this is a spot that they might be able to address maybe sorta in the waiver wire, but
it's so hard. Yeah,
I know. Thomas and Illuminar, Neal and Azudu, and I hate that depth, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think we bitched and moaned about Azudu the entire training camp, and yet he's still on the roster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, both of those guys, and I have not been. I want to give them time. I'm not going to go on this rant. I'm going to give them the
Well,
time with Carmen Bursello before I
I
lose my mind.
really, something. I am not going to give up on Evan Neal nearly as quickly as maybe I would have done 5 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
if this was another Eric Flowers situation, I'd be like, "Fuck that guy."
Yeah.
But I'm serious. I'm
Yeah,
just
I'm with you.
like, I'm now that he's not starting anymore, and now he's going to be more of as a backup. I'm ready to give him even more time to, like you said, get under Priscilla's kind of like guidance and tutelage and kind of maybe get better technique and things. So
My hope is that we have a very long time of healthy tackles. Let's say like 12 to 13 weeks, and then if we have anything, they're like nicks and bruises where he's only got to come in for a game, and hopefully by then, I'm hoping that amount of time with Brasillo, just training, not being under pressure, he'll be more functional for the one game that we need him, or whatever. Him or Azudo, I don't care,
or if he
whichever one.
or if he figures his shit out and then next year maybe competes to start again.
But
I'm not, again.
That's next year. I'm just talking
Yeah.
about this year. Like I think I'm trying not to lose my mind. He's been just pretty much cleared to start playing only a couple weeks ago.
And that's what I mean. I'm looking at him as more of a longer term kind of reclamation project, like
Right,
an internal reclamation project. And to me, that horizon is not like, well, by October he'll be ready to start again. No, it's like, let's get this kid figured out. Let's get him, let's get him healthy. Let's get him coached up. Let's get him the right reps, and let's get him back into the lineup and in the starting rotation if required when he's ready. And I think we have a little time to do that. We need to rush him back in.
So I have one more offensive person than you do. I have 26. You have 25, right?
Yes.
Okay. So moving over to defense.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive line, I have 5 guys.
Me too.
Okay. Dexter Lawrence, Rakeem Nunez Roaches, and I think, Jordan Riley is one of those guys. I think Elijah Chapman is another one of those guys. And I think they like DJ Davidson. Me personally, I wouldn't. He's 53rd on my roster.
I have him in, but yeah, same.
Interesting. Yeah. So Casey Rogers, I think, is an interesting guy for them to have on their practice squad, and I think he'll make it through. But other than that, Ryder Anderson gone, Timmy Horn tore his Achilles.
They're gone already. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. At the edge position, I think this is where, again, I'm different from other people. I have 4 guys, but there's a 5th that I would really pop in here.
Go ahead.
Personally, I would even do it over Davidson, but I know they're not going to do that. But Brian Birds, Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, and Carlos Basham. You?
I had Azeez. Wait a minute. Let me look here what I have on my list here. I have Azeez out.
Okay. Tell me.
I'm a little more. I think on defense, I got some names. I think some more bigger names are going to be on the out list than I think I did on offense.
I mean, Dan Duggan has talked about him being traded, so
I
don't think you're crazy. But so what do you got?
I have 3. I have Whitley still.
Okay, so you have Whitley. Maybe I'm nuts. I watched that game now twice, and I thought that Tamon Fox looked better than Benton Whitley. Benton Whitley didn't look bad. I don't think that he looked bad. To me, he looked like he was more like Boogie Basham, and I think Tamon Fox looked a little bit better as a pass rusher. And I also like Benton Whitley got burned pretty hard on a zone read with Adrian Martinez, who, by the way, Adrian Martinez, I thought looked pretty good. The quarterback for the Jets, I thought he looked good. But yeah, Ben Whitley, he looked okay. I think Tamon Fox looked better. I would have him in over DJ Davidson probably if I were making this roster, but I know it's never going to happen. And I think both of those guys will make it to the practice squad perfectly well.
Yeah.
So you have Azeez just gone then, huh?
Yeah.
He has not impressed. I don't know that they're going to give up on him, but
I think that's one of the names that it's just going to be like, oh, that's, every year, every team has a guy like you kind of raise your eyebrow a little bit about. I think he's going to be one of my guys.
That's fair. I have 5 linebackers making the team.
Okay.
And they are Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden, Isaiah Simmons, and Carter Coughlin and Darius Muasau for special teams, basically.
I have my list is all over the place here. Hold on here. I have same.
You have the same. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought, Deontay Johnson, I think he's hurt. I don't know what they're going to do about that, but I think that he's probably really good. They would want him on the roster, but I think with him being hurt, they can sneak him onto the practice squad. And I thought that KJ Cloyd looked very good in that game. I would try to get him to the practice squad if at all possible. I thought he looked very good. In the third preseason game, I think it's easy for linebackers to look good. There's a lot of running the ball. You know what I mean? But I thought he looked good in space, too. I thought he was a pretty quality tackler throughout the game, which is a point I said they were all really bad at. So
Let's talk for a second about Isaiah Simmons. So where do you see him being more linebackerish and less nickelish than we saw in this preseason, or where do you ultimately see him?
I think he's just going to be the third down money backer, which is, you can call it whatever you want to call it. Linebacker, safety, DB, it doesn't matter. Okay. Sometimes he'll be in coverage. A lot of times he'll be blitzing. It's all the same shit at that point.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to be passing downs. You know what I mean? And it's only going to be those critical ones. So however you want to designate it, defenses are becoming more and more nebulous anyway.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I'm more uneducated than other people, but.
Well, let me put it this way. Let me change it around a little bit. So less in pass coverage and more, getting after it.
I think they're going to want to send him a lot more than they're going to want to drop him in coverage.
I think that was really the question I was trying to ask, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's also how I would do it personally. I don't think he looks great in coverage.
Agreed.
I'm kind of like holding my breath every time I see him in one-on-one. Corners. I have outside corners.
Okay.
Or do you want me to do all of them together?
Do them all together because I have them all together.
All right. So I'll list them separately, but I'll go through the whole thing. So I have 4 corners. I have one guy just barely not making it.
Okay.
I have Deonte Banks, Nick McLeod, Cordell Flott, and Trey Hawkins. The one guy I have just barely missing is Alex Johnson. I thought that he played pretty well, could have earned a spot. In the slot, I have Drew Phillips, and I can't not pick Darnay Holmes. I don't understand why they're not. I know they're not going to do that. If anything, they'll pick Alex Johnson over Darnay Holmes. I know that's what they're going to do. But if it's me, I'm leaving the outside corner off, and I'm keeping Darnay for the slot.
I had Flott on either IR or gone.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I've never been sold on him from day one, and I think they're going to move on from him personally.
I don't think that you're wrong, but I think the initial 53, I think he's going to make it, and then he'll be axed.
I absolutely think they're going to be. I also think some of the things like that Andrew Thomas renegotiation with his contract and stuff, I think they're trying to make a deal to get a cornerback, a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. I mean, I think Dan Duncan broke it down and said that it wasn't as much as it was, but I could actually see what you're saying. I think that they did enough money movement there to have done a deal with someone, maybe.
Or at least to put themselves in a position they're going to try to do it. Whether they actually do or not is another thing, but I think that is a position that needs to be addressed, and not even just who came up the scrap heap that got cut somewhere else. I think they're going to be a little more proactive in trying to do it.
I agree. Safeties, I have 4: Jason Pinnock, Tyler Nubin, Dane Belton, and Javarius Owens.
I had Alex Johnson instead of Javarius Owens.
Oh, okay. So okay.
Owens is hurt, right? So he might end up in IR.
He could. It's interesting because I can't tell how many of these injuries are serious, how many of them are Dable trying to hide people, and how many of them are Dable just nursing them and not allowing them to get further hurt. You know what I mean? So I'm really in the dark with what injuries are serious and which ones are not. So if you say I could see them doing that, I agree with you because I could see it for sure.
Yeah,
I can't see anything clearly. So
I kept injured as just stock word injured. It's like, and also for that flexibility of, injured, we can stash him there for a bit.
And then that leaves just the 3 specialists, which is Gano, Gillen, and Kreider, right?
Correct.
That puts us at 50. We were very close there.
We were very close. Yeah.
I was a little weird with my Tamon Fox, Alex Johnson, Darnay Holmes is really the only, and uh, Isaiah Hodgins.
I feel like the Flott one, people are going to be like, huh? Because I feel like people were invested in him from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, not that he's any good or not, but I feel like ever since they drafted him, like people like we talked about him quite a bit on this show, and other the other shows talk about him quite a bit too. And I think he's one of those a little more name recognition than he's probably worthy of having. So I think that might be a little bit of a interesting.
Well, I think it's one
But
of those things where he's a third round pick. So like, I don't know what you expect a third round corner to eventually become, but everyone knew he was super young. So it was like, okay, we could develop something here. And we never really saw much of him in practice, but in the game time that he was in there, he would have his moments, like standing up AJ Brown and stuff like that. So like, this was the year where it was just like, he was never going to compete really for a starting spot with a Dory Jackson or Deontay Banks. But so this year was kind of the year I think people were expecting him to take that leap. So
that was the battle. Him and McLeod was like one of the biggest battles we had in camp.
It was like the worst battle of all time.
But I'm saying
it was basically a surrender.
But I meant like going into camp, that was when we were really focusing in on, and it never happened. Yeah,
not at all. Yeah. All right. So again, this is just the initial 53, so I don't want to harp too much on this. And we'll revisit this question next week as well. So be sure.
The best. Oh, good. I was gonna say the best thing that came out of this is that we really have to modify this too much due to injury that happened during training camp and during preseason, which is good.
So I'm going to revisit this question. I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm going to revisit again next week. So be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and of course YouTube. But so Cranky, you had us predicted throughout the summer is going 8-9. Now that you've seen the initial 53, do your best to just erase that Jet game from your memory.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your 8-9 record?
Extremely optimistic.
I mean, keep in mind, it is only 2 more wins than last year.
I mean, if you're going to tell me that in week 17, when it's a meaningless game, we squeak out it, we get a win there, great.
You had week 18.
Yeah. I'm revising it down a little bit from that optimistic view.
So what, I think 7 wins. What do you say?
I think I still think we're in the 5 to 6 range.
Whoa, significant downgrade. I also was 8-9. I don't necessarily agree with the games that I said and the reasons I said in the past, but I could see 8-9 again. Like, I think they've improved in all the roster hasn't gotten worse. I don't think the most significant spot that really is worrying the shit out of me, and I don't think on this day in this moment, maybe next week I'll have a better answer. It's the second cornerback spot. Right now, for sure, it looks like shit. Like I really think that we're gonna struggle to score enough points to keep up with a defense that's gonna give up that much stuff, but. Next week we might have a serious corner on our hands. How the hell should I know?
That's true. I mean, I guess also, and we probably weren't going to see it in training camp, or we weren't going to see it really in these games. But I just want to see a much more aggressive offense than we've had. I mean, I think it's as much as are we going to take more shots downfield? Are we going to be more aggressive? And that's. That we're going to have to see the attempt at the execution.
I think that's pretty cut and dry. They've been very clear that they're going to attempt that.
Well, I want to see it. We did. And again,
you said attempt. Do you mean attempt or execute?
Both. I mean, I get it. Who played in these last couple of preseason games? You're not going to get that much, but I want to see it on the field. A lot of coaches say they want to be more aggressive. They want to do this. They want to spread the offense. Blah blah blah. I want to see it.
I don't know. I thought the starters, the 2 air outs to Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton, showed me pretty much what they were doing in camp. So
that's great.
I'm not worried about the attempts. I'm worried about them being, and I'm actually not super worried about that. I think that the line has shown that they're able to block long enough for the play to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think as long as the play is called, I think they'll be. I think it's pretty clear they've ingrained in DJ they want to do this, so he's looking. So you have the three components for an attempt. Is you're going to call it, you got the time to do it, and you've told the quarterback that's what you want him to do. So those are the three things that they haven't had. They weren't calling it because they couldn't block long enough, and then when they did have those opportunities, the quarterback wasn't looking deep. So I think the attempt thing is going to happen. The execution is a matter of I don't know, and that's what I wanted to see in this third preseason game. Even if it was against backups, like I wanted to see.
Yeah, nobody cares if the scores or anything. It's just or just get more reps attempting it.
Correct.
Even if it doesn't work, it's like okay. Every time I throw a post or something to neighbors, it's something they're going to tweak the next time they run it again and again and again and again. Well, if you didn't attempt it 4 times this week, those are 4 we're behind waiting for the season to get going. I mean, I'm a little bit of a show me guy. I want to see it. I want to see the attempts in a real game. That's all.
Yep.
That's all.
All right, so I guess follow us on Twitter for news. I'm sure that I will be retweeting when I'm supposed to be working. All of the news that of guys being cut, of waiver claims being made. It's going to be a flurry, back and forth. Probably starting first thing in the morning. I think they'll give some guys a shot at I don't know. And like you said, there might be a trade in there. There might be a deal coming up. So follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan. Follow the show at Just Giants Pod so that you can remember that next week is the first 2 in 1 week. It's the start, the end of the preseason, the end of the off season, and the start of the regular season.
Yeah, I'll be broadcasting from sunny Florida all next week. I'll be down there for 2 games in Gainesville, so I'm excited about that. So I'll have a little bit of a tan when you see me.
All right, and until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.